Welcome to Chain Reactions, a weekly live stream from Myosin.xyz, the leading global marketing network, and hosted by yours truly, Blake, and my co-host, Polina. Tune in each week as we jam on the latest happenings in the wild and wonderful world of Web3. We're live on Unlonely.app every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, and release the pod every following week on Tuesdays. Now, let's talk Chain Reactions.
But I think we're ready to go, actually. You good to go, Fab?
Good to go. Let's make it happen.
All right. GTG. All right. Well, let's get the show on the road. Welcome, everyone, to Chain Reactions. It's your weekly live stream for Myosin.xyz with yours truly and Polina, my co-host. Say hi, Polina.
Hi. Hello.
And Chain Reactions is a weekly live stream and podcast where we have on some of the best founders, marketers, and just all around quality people from the crypto space. And really excited to have Fab on today, or Fabrizio from Legion. They've been making a lot of noise lately. And it's actually a very good, I think, kind of 3-part series that we accidentally ended up doing because we had 10 Protocol on 2 weeks ago. We had our friends at Nozomi on last week. And now we got Fab and the Legion crew on. So I think there's a lot of cross-pollination between all of these. But really excited to have you on, Fab. I'm really excited to kind of chat all things Legion. How are you doing today?
Bloody good. And it's very, very good to be here. Paulina, Blake, appreciate it. Yeah, happy to get spicy. Happy to jump into whatever you want. We've got some audience participation. Happy to answer anything. We've got a ton of exciting things coming up in the future. Obviously, we've had some recent news on the raise, but I'll let you take it away being the host.
I love it. I love it. Well, we always start pretty simply. We'd love to kind of start with you and your story and how you got to this point, right? I think I think the funny thing with, when companies kind of blow up or they make a lot of noises, we don't always see the journey, right? And all the work that it took to get there. So would love to kind of hear your story and what that career background looks like, what that journey was, how you got to crypto and how you got to Legion where we are today.
Yeah, super happy to do so. And I think the more I think about it being a founder, you have to be a little bit crazy and super dogmatic about a particular outcome. I think it's, it's easy to glorify the successful cases, but I think a lot of people, you don't see the hard yards you put in, right? Punching out 12 to 20 hour days, 7 days a week, because you got to believe in something, that's for sure. But maybe super high level overview. Got a hectic accent. My mom's Polish American, my old man's Italian. I was born in Australia. I lived in a ton of different places. To keep like a really long story short, went through like what you could probably call a bad divorce with my parents when I was very young, which essentially put us in a pretty sticky situation when it came to kind of like financial means. My old man was a primary school teacher. My mom had been, she was super young. And we essentially ended up in a situation kind of back between different countries and households and at the lower end of the socioeconomic status, living on food stamps, not having the same access to opportunity a lot of people did from being 6, 7 years old. I think that kind of like ingrained into me some good and some bad, kind of this belief of being like, if you're going to be the underdog, you have to work 10 times as hard just to be on the same pegging. So I think like that in itself has been always of a high level of interest to me, is that how do you get to a place where you can have equal opportunity? Obviously, you can never have equal outcomes. It's impossible. But I think people should at least have access to opportunity on an equal footing. Fast forward, on the like career side, not super exciting. University, minor in math, and did a double degree science, major in geoscience. I was top of my class for economic geology, worked as an exploration geologist a little bit in the Cobar Basin, Australia outback, looking at nickel laterite deposits. It was a very far different life from this. And then the other side, pure technical comp sci. Did some stints as a geologist, did some like different bits and pieces, and then kind of realized I'm a bit more interested in the consulting front, started at Deloitte Digital, doing dev work, slowly moved from dev to more strategy. I was always curious on how things are operating, not necessarily just being the executor. And then, from there, to international projects, had my own kind of business in London, Rolls Royce, Unilever, Nissan, all that kind of corporate stuff, just enough to take the soul out of it. And then got more into startups, was at a tech startup for a while, got acquired by a major retailer in Australia. And then that kind of gave me free reign to jump into something I've been super passionate about. Actually, originally my housemate got me into crypto back in 2014 as a means of exchange for acquiring items online. Is probably what
You know what I will say? We've had a lot of folks on, and when we do talk about crypto origin stories, it's almost always, like I just want to buy some things online. And it's very common.
Exactly. For sure. But we'll leave that at that. And then, I think been kind of still around for a while, but it didn't properly fully dive in on a day-to-day basis until kind of DeFi Summer rolled around. Obviously, I was involved in 2017 in bits and pieces, and even post that. But I think I actually took a serious love for getting involved on literally every single day, many hours come DeFi Summer. And I think the thing that attracted me was it could be from anywhere. And you could participate in kind of these crazy Ponzi games. You could be whatever age, gender, race, religion, amount of money, you had internet connection and determination, you can get involved.
Yeah. I remember, I have a similar story, which is I remember I had friends who had Bitcoin or were playing around with that early on, but it wasn't until 2017, 2018. I was ETH, it's what's a blockchain and how do you what are smart contracts and this thing's going to change the world. But it was super early at the time. So it's similar story. It's 2020 DeFi Summer. That's when things started to feel so real, right? Because now you're oh, you can actually Aave and Curve and all these things are starting to come out. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So
and then,
where Legion is coming after DeFi Summer.
So DeFi Summer happens.
And
then how do we get to this point then? Yeah.
Well, naturally, I've always been purely interested in building, shipping, executing, pushing the boundaries. So did a bunch of things around mostly DeFi. Was unfortunately, or fortunately, probably unfortunately, very involved back in the Terra days and how I originally met the Delphi team. If you're familiar with Delphi Ventures, they took big bets and Delphi Labs, built Mars Protocol and Astroport, and got to know the team back then. Obviously, post Terra collapse, a lot of things went pretty south. From the back of that, I was still continuing to build kind of around the Cosmos ecosystem, but we'd always been fascinated, having been a founder, an investor, built startups, done consulting. Kind of three areas I was mostly either interested in because it's an annoying problem. One being kind of legal setup, and that it was very complicated and expensive, and I feel like it didn't need to be. Second one, mostly around smart contract audits. I feel like it could be done much better with more accountability. And then the third one is capital formation, right? It's kind of crypto's killer app from day one. Back in 2013, the first ever ICO, Mastercoin. It wasn't $1 billion thing, but the whole function of that was the idea is you didn't need to go to Silicon Valley at the time. You could raise capital from some developers, could take that capital and go and build something that's cutting edge and a little bit different. And I think that whole ethos has been very important. And time and time again, kind of capital formation has been proven to be crypto's killer application. And so we've been kind of toying around the idea of doing something capital formation. We saw MiCA, Market and Crypto Assets Regulation, coming up. Gabe Shapiro, for example, now leading MetalX, he was a big proponent of that. And we kind of said, all right, if we're going to give this thing a proper run, what does it look like? At the same time, I'm my current co-founder, Maddie. We hit it off. And we were just mega interested in solving this very difficult problem. And we said, let's give this thing a proper run. It was a pretty bearish market at the time, but we had a future that we saw. We wanted to change the market structure for capital formation, and we dreamed very big. So still today, we're not happy with the structure. We're kind of thinking, how do we take on IPOs? How do we get to that kind of that scale?
So what if you were to sum up everything that's wrong with capital formation now, since you touched base on it, and that's kind of what led you to build Legion. So I feel like it's a good backstory. What are the specific things that piss you off the most?
Is that, to be frank with you, especially current, oftentimes crime wins, right? I think that there's a pretty interesting dynamic. People say product market fit and vice versa. I think there's probably a listing market fit type projects that happen today. You see this in many projects where you control most of the float. You absolutely pump some of these tokens to wild valuation, 17, 18 billion valuations. The recent projects that came out are doing this. It's definitely not valued at that, but they clean up all the shorts, make a ton of money longing it, and then they'll just let it bleed out after that. And I think from whether you like it or not, your token price is sort of the main marketing mechanism if the tech is good or the tech is bad. And unfortunately, that kind of is a broken incentive in the sense that it's beneficial for tokenization. A lot of this stuff being liquid, you can find a more accurate market price, but by a function of that, people kind of prioritizing the wrong things. So allocating capital to these particular projects because it can benefit in the short term and vice versa. And I think a function of that is we typically not thinking long term enough. Outside that, mostly inorganic price discovery, mostly in the private markets as well. I think there are two probably big fundamental issues. And that sort of leads on to the knock-on effects of the low float IFTV meta that was around for a bit, and then people working with very active market makers, we can call it. People negotiating exactly, very very sketchy deals and vice versa. Yeah, I think we've been very bullish on the idea of like, crypto rails are a 10x improvement on what you see in traditional finance. They're programmable, they're global by nature, they're on 24/7, right? Very low settlement fees and settlement costs for people to be involved. That itself is a 10x improvement, but still today, IPOs still dominate for distribution and capital. In 2024, I think global IPO proceeds were loosely 126 billion. North of that, public token sales didn't even crack 1%. Still like can be changed.
And just a quick note on that, right? Like I think that's rapidly changing. Like the stream of news, at least from the US perspective, is like nonstop, right? Like Project Crypto with Atkins saying that they want to move everything on chain. I think speaking of the problem you're talking about, right? Traditional capital formation IPOs, like when Figma IPO'd was like a month or two ago, and it was horrendously mispriced, right? Like they thought they were going to open, I think at like 10, and then they ended up selling at like 100. It was a gigantic difference, right? I don't remember the exact numbers. And then that's money lost for the co-founders and whatnot, right? Or if you misprice that and you think it's going to launch here and it launches here, all that in between, it's gone, right? For at least the founders and the early stage builders who participated. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that is super fair, right? I think to get to that scale, and like you're super right. Like we've been super dialed in with all of the regs. We've got in, met the Securities Exchange Commission. Always funny. If you know 21 Jump Street, that famous meme is like, find the dealer, infiltrate the supplier. After getting into the
My
SEC,
name is
you get this
Jeff.
exactly get this little like badge. I just sent it to some of the guys at Delphi, and I came back with that gift, and I think it's quite funny because during the Gary regime, you definitely would not be doing that. The strategy was don't get noticed. But now the US is obviously very forward thinking. They're very active, very engaged, asking the right questions. We met with senators, we met with a bunch of different partners. And I think it's just like a very positive outlook. And I think, the delta between what we see in public sales today and kind of like IPO level, the key thing that's missing is largely around trust. And that will be a function of disclosures, right? So kind of want to eliminate a lot of the information asymmetry you end up with today and get to a place where all of a sudden a lot of these traditional distribution channels and traditional finance distribution channels can then participate. You see this already with BTC, and you see this with ETH now, obviously going on a bit of a rip. But how you take that and then start funding these projects that should change the world in the near future.
So Blake, do you have anything to add to that? Or
well, I was just gonna ask because I'm very curious because I think when exactly did you guys start building Legion? I guess when did that exactly start?
I guess formally November 3rd, 2023.
Okay, so that's very. I mean, it takes a while to cook up something like this, right? Because there's a lot of compliance and regulation you guys have to deal with, especially.
Oh man, it's a necessary evil, but it takes a bloody long time, longer than you think.
Yeah. Well, so and that's actually my question, and I'm very curious about that. Is how you got to that point, and how it evolved with. I don't know, frankly speaking, and again, I can only speak from an American perspective, right? But especially with the regulation in the U.S., right? I think there was a lot of people up until even last year's election where we didn't know what the regulatory environment was going to look like. So I'm very curious how that had, when you were building this under Gensler, under a really strict regulatory regime, how are you guys planning on launching that? How did that evolve?
And also,
after, things shifted.
Just maybe just take a step back in a minute or less for those who maybe not are familiar with Legion, what it is, and then what were the struggles of building.
That's actually a good point.
Under the Gary.
We maybe went too deep. I maybe went too deep in the questions too quick. But yes, actually, we should very quickly clarify what is Legion, because we already talked about the problems that you guys are solving in capital formation. So how are you guys solving it? What is Legion? And then go crazy.
Great question. Yeah. So I think some people say capital formation platform, very fancy way of saying we facilitate public fundraising for the best quality projects. Now, the differentiator between Legion and kind of the core thesis that we had is we wanted to take the same two-way opt-in you have in private markets today and bring that to public markets. Now, you might say, what the hell is two-way opt-in, right? Very simply put, if you're looking to raise from private markets today, as a project, you'll sit down with different funds, VCs, particular angels. You jump on a call. You kind of spend a few meetings together to say, hey, we think you're good. You think we're good. We're going to invest financial capital, but not just financial capital. You're also going to get support from, I don't know, we can be liquidity providers. We can make introductions. We can be like a brand, like a positive signal brand for you, and vice versa. And so we kind of looked at the public sale items were done today, and realized that if you start segmenting different people, you have probably a large bucket of value extractors. They just want to like maximize extraction as quick as possible and move on and do the same thing to the next project. And then you have people who actually are creating and adding value and actually adding benefit back to the project. Now, we largely look at kind of like the superpower of tokenization is coordinating real world behavior at scale, right? And you can do that very effectively if you have incentive alignment among the right people, or you can do it very poorly if you have incentive alignment around the wrong people. So much like if you raise from a good cap table, good defined on what the particular project is, you're more likely to succeed, whereas you raise from a cap table that doesn't really care when token, just immediately dump it and kill the project is obviously not net beneficial. So the mechanism to do that at scale was the Legion score. You can come and get a Legion score on Legion today, bit of fun. We're pushing next update soon. Find out your social clout. You can find out kind of like your dev activity. We've got some unique like insights in there and scoring, on-chain stuff, SVM, EVM, investor score. This something it's unique only to Legion. We'll be publicly releasing after building for some time as well. And you can think about it as like a qualitative and a quantitative way for founders essentially to vet their public cap table. So maybe it's a bit north of a minute, but more or less just think about us as a fundraising platform where if you add value, you can get access to the best deals, typically either at better or equal terms as VCs would get. And if you're a project that want to raise from super high value, add community members, you can help curate your public cap table at scale on Legion.
Boom. That's a good one. Yeah. And building on top of that, right? I think it makes so much sense, I guess, because I remember when I first heard about you guys, I was like, okay, so it's a fundraising thing. But I think the secret sauce is that reputation score, right? Because as you're saying, that's the main thing that I think you guys can solve for that very few have figured out is it's that evolution of like thinking back to the ICO days, as you mentioned, all the way out of here. Like there's a lot of work to be done. But with that in mind, I want to go back to how you guys are thinking about building all this, right? So as you're thinking about reputation scores, you're thinking about getting accredited investors or getting that verification check, right, of are they qualified to even participate? How did that evolve since 23 up until obviously the regulatory tailwinds, I guess, that have suddenly come in this year and end of last?
Yeah, I think we kind of took a bet that so obviously US is the largest market. Europe kind of made a first move on this. They released something called MiCA, Market Crypto Assets Regulation. And it was largely the first ever regulation that was covering multiple nation states at once. It would be consistent regulation across Europe. Now, this was largely based on disclosures. No surprise here. The US market and Project Crypto is also based largely on disclosures rather than enforcement, courtesy of Gary Pryor. And they did a lot of kind of initial pioneering into this and thinking into what this looks like. And we kind of were set up from day one to cater to that. Now, it's not perfect. Definitely some changes that can be recommended and hopefully continue to iterate. But we hadn't expected, I mean, there was a chance, but you never know, right? Especially with politics. Is Trump going to come back or not? Is it going to be someone else, vice versa? So we're kind of in the fortunate position of being set up for a lot of what Europe's doing, and then the US kind of taking a not too dissimilar lens in wanting to focus on disclosure. They've been very open about that, and then that's just like helps us kind of push and get involved in the right conversations and better understand what that looks like. Till today, we can still service. So you've got your like typical Reg D offering or Reg S. We can still service fully accredited US investors under 506C exemption, but that comes with limitations as well. So you have to be formally accredited by a particular lawyer or vice versa. I think the two things that we should expect to come out of the US is probably redefining what accredited means. I think people in general can agree that it's a very nascent definition.
Yeah. And it's a very old school way of viewing things, I think, right? It's evolved over the past couple of years, but it's still not quite, I think, up to par, maybe. I don't know. You tell me.
I would have to agree.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a skewed system, like this kind of social ladder with accredited. There are so many viral tweets about how you can be accredited and then like gamble away.
Yeah, that for me is crazy, right? You can hyper gamble on the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl with whatever duo platinum with NHL. You could bet all your money on it. But you can't get access to something which you might consider a less risky bet, which I found a little bit insane. But I think the US market, they're very open about this. I think they've been very forthcoming around wanting to kind of restructure this. And I think we've seen some very exciting and forward-thinking things to come out of Atkins and the current task force, et cetera, and Project Crypto. These are all very exciting things. I think they want to bring crypto back on shore to the US, and I think that's very net positive for the industry. And to some degree, it kind of gives us a chance at kind of realizing our initial vision, right? Kind of disrupting traditional finance. I mean, the other way to look at this is the traditional financiers come and they don't really care about on-chain issuance. They don't really care about all this stuff. They just like kind of own it. So I think it's important for crypto native people to kind of want to push the boundaries and have the conversations and be part of that journey, defining kind of what this next evolution for blockchain looks like.
I love it.
For sure.
I have a lot of questions, but Polina, I'm going to throw it to you. Yeah.
No, go for it.
Yeah. Well, I would love to kind of dive a bit deeper now into like piggybacking off of that, right? Like thinking through as we're talking about fundraising, as we're talking about regulation, I'd like to shift it a little bit now to the companies themselves, the platform itself, right? So what is that process, number one, of, are you guys reaching out to these companies and having conversations saying, come on to Legion? Are they coming to you? Is it a bit of both? What was that process like? What is your selection criteria? How do you guys think about that? Maybe we can start there, and then we'd love to dive a bit deeper into the secret sauce, as we say, right? The reputation score and the Legion score, really. How you guys think about that? But
I think for both companies and retail, right? Like if I am to participate.
Yeah, I think this is fair. And I think I want to caveat this by saying that Legion is changing, right?
Okay. So some alpha.
Yeah, some alpha. I think back in January, we obviously saw a positive move in the market structure. And you see a lot more like fair launches. I mean, fair is a very subjective word, depending on who you ask what fair means. But having more of the public involved in earlier stage, I think is very net positive. A lot of players pioneering that, and we're happy to be side by side pushing that along as well. So I think that's net beneficial, but we're still kind of, like I said, we dream big, bigger than kind of what you see on CT. We're less around PBP. We kind of want to grow the pie to the next level. And we've been super bullish on blockchain rails and crypto rails. So we kind of took a step back in like Jan this year and said, if we actually had like a magic wand and we can redesign what, a distribution looks like, the ideal distribution setup looks like, what is that? What do we need to have in place? And so we took that and we have some very exciting partnerships, very exciting new service offering. We already started announcing, for example, we'll have a round with have public involved, as well as some like Van Eck and Brevin Howard leading, like a Coinbase Ventures, Crypto.com Ventures, Kraken, et cetera, also in the cap table. I think that should kind of speak to a few of the interesting like possible channels that we can either access or even from the traditional finance side of things, giving us a little bit more credibility to have a seat at that table. But back to your original question, if you're a founder, I mean, to be honest, we get a ton of inbound. Sometimes the quality of inbound could be very poor. So that happens.
GM, sir, I would love to talk to you about my project in crypto.
I want millions, please, now.
Give millions. I could pay you $0.
Yeah, that's true. I think we always like, it's kind of always a not super beneficial thing, but I always try to give feedback to everyone, right? Because I think it's very hard to be a founder, very hard to be an entrepreneur. So I think it's important, whether good, bad, or ugly, try to provide it. But we kind of look at the breakdown of projects coming through Legion. We try to do a little bit more vetting than like a pure anyone can kind of list. I think traditionally, like the launchpad model was quite broken because the way you monetize is just like the more projects that come through is more stable coins you earn. So you just want to churn at as many projects as you can until one point you realize like, oh, there's actually not many good projects left. Let's do medium tier. Let's do lower tier. I think, I don't have to name names. You look back in history on some prominent launchpads and see where they are today. So I think we've been very cognizant of that. I think brand, obviously, and reputation are very important. And I think that also will speak to kind of the new offering coming out. The due diligence process for us is a little bit more of a pain, I'd say. We look at regulation, understand like, what sort of product market fit, what's the stage you're at, kind of how active community you are. We have sort of this like AI bot that was designed originally by the team at Delphi. That kind of like does a lot of the initial vetting and kind of breaking down. And then we have something similar to kind of like the Legion score that does a lot of these vetting of projects. If it passes the first few stages, then we have a select group of, principals from like big VC funds down to kind of like your average, like left guard, probably not the right word, but in the trenches people. And they kind of have an opportunity to provide direct feedback. It's not like fully opened. We kind of contain it to about 20 people. And then that feedback's kind of used to understand, is this project good or not? And that's for the Legion curated deals. And then, we move forward off the back of that. So a little bit more of a long-winded process, but we just want to make sure it is the right fit from both parties.
And
I like
how
that.
many, like, is there set amount of deals that you guys publish on a monthly basis, or like is there any KPIs per quarter in terms of the amount of opportunities that you launch?
It's more a function of the quality of projects, right? If there's like some really good projects, we could do 4, 5, 6 sales in a month. One of them, like 1.5 months, we did no sales because we thought there's not that good projects at the moment, so it doesn't really make sense to push them through. So it's a variable number.
Okay, makes sense. As a retail investor, I see that you're launching a project is going live on Legion. Anyone can participate. Is that right?
Not if you are domiciled in an OFAC sanctioned country. And as it stands today, in the US, if you are non-accredited, but we expect to see either the definition of that change or the US stance on that change.
Fingers crossed. And then building on this, Fab, right? Because I love that, point about the fundamental. I feel like so much of, as someone who's, a founder myself, right? And I've been building various companies. I think the key is always like incentive alignment, right? It's like, show me an incentive and I'll show you the outcomes. Right. And I love that point about launchpads. And if you're incentivized through just like taking fees off, basically just like, swaps and fees, right? Like you just want to list as many companies to just like generate revenue. But with that in mind, obviously, if you guys are thinking about quality and curation, I realize I don't actually understand or quite know your business model, which is how does Legion make money? Why is Legion incentivized to curate the best? And how does that work for you guys? In a way that everyone wins. Yeah,
definitely. I think it typically take most of the fee from the project side, but typically in the native token, and also typically with some sort of lockup, right? So if that token goes to 0, then we did a lot of work for nothing. So I think that in itself is a good alignment mechanism to ensure that, if we have to be bullish on the project, we want to put our own money down and say, this is something we think is going to perform very well. Because if we don't win and the community doesn't win, we don't win. So
that's why the vetting process is so thorough.
Yeah, it is for now. For sure.
And then have you guys thought about like, because I think the interesting is there's always like the initial raise, and then there's, especially when you talk to like VCs and other funds and other things like that as well. Have you guys had any, and maybe this is what's coming up in some form or another, but also like the post fundraise, like how you support those teams and how they grow. Maybe I'm just curious how if you guys are thinking about that, or if that's on the roadmap at all, or if it's more just we're here, this is our like lane, we stick to this, and
probably twofold. It's like we do want to take highly concentrated bets in capital formation. So there's probably a ton of adjacent businesses being spin off, but we don't. And I keep it focused. And this next iteration of Legion, you'll see we've really doubled down. But having said that, I think the post-investment experience is pretty critical. I think if you would have seen, we had a partnership with Cookie 3, released something called Attention Capital Markets. And this is where rather than just like, yapping or snapping to get an airdrop, you actually front your own capital as an investor, and then you can get access to either reduced cost basis for the investment or better vesting period, right? And this is, again, incentive alignment, right? Very basic, but it kind of cuts out everyone that's just like, I don't really care about this thing, just get the tokens, dump it, and move on. Because again, you're fronting your own capital. You have a different psychological relationship with these projects. Like you bring in different psychological principles, loss aversion, endowment effect, and vice versa. So I think there's definitely some bits and pieces there. And also with the Cookie 3 team, we've got something else in that realm that will continue to ensure projects are good. Because the fact of the matter is like TGEs are really the start of the journey. They shouldn't be the main exit event that, you kind of say like, all right, I'm done, I'm out. And that's kind of one of the challenges that crypto does have is like having an immediately liquid market. It's like you can have projects that founders have already cashed out everything, even before TGE, to be honest with you, right? You can
on secondaries and all that.
Vice versa, OTCs, exactly. So again, incentive alignment in the end of the day is pretty critical here. And it's definitely something we've been thinking about for a long time, because we do actually fundamentally want to see the projects that come through Legion actually have positive impact on the space and the world and get involved and actually make change.
And I think also to build on that, a lot of you surfaced Legion score a couple of times during this conversation, and it seems to be like a reputation and Legion score is a core part of how you guys operate. What is it and how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, largely put, you can think about it as a quantified figure for assessing whether a particular individual might be a good or bad fit for your project. So we kind of put out this white paper like about 2 years ago or something that talked about this idea of merit-based fundraising, merit-based ICOs. Fancy way of saying, like, rather than like how much money you bring to the table or whatever, it's like how you add value to projects. So again, coming back to that two-way opt-in in private markets, bring it to public markets. So the Legion score is kind of twofold, right? A quantified number that brings in, like, what does your developer activity look like? Which open source repos have you committed to? Did you commit to open source repos that Vitalik has or Gavin Wood have, right? And there's like a particular Sybil proof mechanisms in there. On the social side, like, what does your smart follower list look like? How often are you talking? What projects are you talking about, and vice versa? On the on-chain side, SVM, EVM, what type of user are you? You like go like 100x long on Hyperliquid every time a new meme coin is listed, or are you more conservative, moving capital around and being like a liquidity provider? And then kind of on the investor, how are you sort of interacting with projects over time? These are kind of like the four main premises on the quantitative side, and then we tie that in with the qualitative information too. So think about like people have a LinkedIn profile. You can also have a similar like LinkedIn investor type profile where you say, are you active investor? Are you passive allocator of funds? Are you a mix between the two? Are you a founder? Are you a shit poster? Are you like a big degen? And that just helps paint a picture of for founders being like, okay, these people actually might be really aligned with my project. They should get bigger allocation or first allocation. So to put this into perspective, the last sale we did was Almanac. Is actually the second sale we did with Almanac. They were only raising $2 million. They had $8 million of funds deposited. So they basically got to go through and say, okay, who are the best people in this group? We'll give fund allocations to. Again, it was also our first attention capital markets play. So a lot of the people were also actively like fronting their own capital and then continuing to like help push things on socials. So I think just that score mechanism not only helps like projects curate people, but also kind of removes a lot of the net negative kind of value extractors that you often see in a lot of these flip as many times as you can type launchpad plays.
So as a user, I would see my Legion score as soon, like when I establish my profile, right?
Yeah. There's some secret sauce in the background that you're not yet privy to, but we will be releasing soon.
I'm curious what my Legion score would be. It's you're vetting both the projects and the users as well.
I set one up myself for 10 when I was like trying to participate in that. It's a really great flow. Shout out to you, because I was able to very just quickly connect my things. I mean, I felt good. I was like, nice score. Okay. Like it's also fun to like build that identity part, right? I think it's that reputation game of everyone wants to, number one, see where they stand in the hierarchy or the ladder, right? Especially if you're good, then you feel good. And if you're not quite there, you're like, well, now I have something to work off of to actually get to that point. So I think it's a big plus.
And you also mentioned attention capital markets, and I think people could perceive Legion as a way to get discovered by quality investors and quality users in Web3 in general. So those that have probably maybe already VC backing a product and are genuinely like solid projects, they would come to you and pass all your vetting procedures, but they ultimately don't have existing communities. So are they setting themselves up for a fail with a public raise with people not knowing who they are initially, maybe, even though the product is amazing and you see a lot of and your system like identifies them as a good project to be on Legion? And how does that work?
Yeah, all very valid questions. Well, I'm also choking on drinking that last bit of tea, so I apologize. Yeah, I mean, it's unique, right? Because you look at the difference between like building in Web3 and building in like Web2, whatever the difference is, that is Web4. And because of tokenization, again, like I said before, coordinating real world behavior at scale, you get this crazy benefit that customer acquisition is actually easy, right? Customer retention is very difficult to do. So I think that, doing a public sale is aligning incentives. But I think it's pretty critical that, again, coming back to being a founder, the 1 million things you have to do, I think is like, you really want to stand for something. And, Murad talks about, believe in something, obviously meme coin focused. But I think the premise of a lot of this stuff is there. Like, people are kind of gone through the burner, especially been in crypto for a long time. And like, just kind of played a zero sum game here. But I think like everyone kind of has projects that you first get involved in and you truly believe will fundamentally change things. It's just like a completely different interaction. I think as founders, you should be pushing to have community in some part involved in a lot of the early stage involvement, because you're really building an ecosystem, not just a business. So I think I always generally encourage founders to do that from any stage, even before the public sale, because in the end of the day, it's like, you need distribution, you need to be able to tell your story, and you need people to believe in kind of what you're trying to achieve. Because again, especially in crypto, pricing is not based on deterministic valuation, mostly speculative hype. People are buying future value of what this thing can be. So you need to be able to tell that story. So it's a very diplomatic way of answering. Typically, if you have a strong community or at least a strong mission and vision, you would perform probably a lot better than not. And also sometimes it's a way for projects to learn, be like, oh, actually, we don't have that yet. But lucky we're still early stage. We have time to fix that.
I have a question following up on this, which, and I think we can talk in hypotheticals, because I'm not quite sure how on the nose this may or may not be, but I think something I'm thinking about is obviously crypto Twitter and the crypto community it's definitely, I think most people would agree, it is a bubble in itself, right? It's a pretty tight community. It's a small community. There's a lot of people out there, as we were talking about in Web 2 or just the real world, who I think would love to access something like this for non-crypto companies, potentially, right? If we think about tokenized equities and IPOs. So I guess it's kind of like a what if exercise of like, in the future, right? If Legion were to move into more traditional kind of like IPOs and capital formation, how, I guess my first thing is like, how would that even work from a reputation score point of view? Because most normal people don't have, like, they don't have Twitter, right? Or X, and a lot of them aren't devs, right? So how would that extend outwards beyond crypto, I guess, is the first question. Yeah.
Yeah. I think from a first principles
Yeah.
perspective, I mean, yeah, that's very true. But, you can think of, in some degree, like, whether you're accredited or not could be considered some quantifiable metric. Obviously, this is not something we're going to do, but people have credit scores to get loans, right? That's another quantifiable way to understand. And I think there's like a lot of pretty exciting tech around like trusted execution environments or FHE, etc. We can start like having some of these accounts and having some sort of footprint. Most people also, they've got Instagram or they've got TikTok or whatever it is the project's trying to optimize for, an Epic Games account, right?
Right.
So I think the premise can scale. I think you're right in saying that we do think largely around like what's in crypto Twitter, and that's typically what's good and what's bad. But yeah, I would like to break out of that
one day. Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? What can you just run us through the numbers for the past couple? Like, so how many sales has it been so far? And I think what's been really impressive is like, I think each one of them has been vastly oversubscribed, which I think speaks to the curation and the quality element. But can you just reel them off? Was it 10 Almanac? And I know Boundless just did one, I think, and I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone there.
Boundless was on Kaito, I think.
Oh, that was, sorry. Apologies. Yeah. There's too many things happening. So 10 and Almanac, yeah.
Yeah, so the differentiator here is that we have, so Nozomi you guys had on last week. I'm sure you have reoccurring listeners. And 10. So the Nozomi team have helped curate some of the deals. So 10 is the first one. I think they're going to announce a new one tomorrow or the day after.
I believe
so they actually own all that curation, and that's like a lot of their responsibility. I kind of more or less use the Legion rails to facilitate that. So yeah, they did the 10 sale, and I think they'll have a second one coming up soon. For us, yeah, Legion Almanac was the last one. We've done maybe still, I want to say 18 public sales over the last like 10 or so months. For example, like Pulse was actually our first one. They're kind of actually, they have this like little device, kind of like a Fitbit tracker. I actually got in the mail the other day. It's kind of cool to do on-chain fundraising and then have the physical device come to your door and then start using it. And this is kind of a lot of the projects that we're interested in, right? Like, it's like kind of like a real kind of like tangible
Real
outcomes.
products.
Yeah, you can talk to people there and show and use and stuff. Sounds crazy sometimes. Yeah, I think like there's a lot of those exciting projects, and then I think this next phase of Legion is going to be a very exciting one. We've got some project locked in that I can't yet leak, but they'll be coming. Like news will be leaked from them very soon. And the scale we're going to do these things are 100x to what we've seen Legion to be able to do today. Like we've been in a pretty good place where we've got some degree of product market fit with the two-way opt-in mechanism and the Legion score, and that's really been good. But now, as Blake, I'm sure you've heard, a famous tweet goes something along the lines of first-time founders are obsessed with the product, second-time founders are obsessed with distribution. Kind of thinking, okay, how do we scale this thing? And we have answers for that coming out in about 10 days.
So much teasing. I can't take it anymore. I don't know how to. Yeah, I love it.
Well,
we'll find out.
We're gonna keep an eye. Yeah. One thing is, I mean, it's already kind of on the nose and it's been mentioned. Yaps, Snaps, Kyoto Launchpad, Legion. Where are you at with, this competition with Kyoto Yaps in launching their capital launchpad and you guys at Legion and their collaboration with Cookie?
Yeah, I think there's like by function, like I said, we're always interested in growing the pie, right? When we see like the CT bubble expand beyond the CT bubble and play in a much bigger market. That's been our predominant focus. And this next iteration, you'll see a lot of this change. And yeah, I mean, like we put out a paper on merit-based fundraising ages ago, and like they're doing a lot of the similar stuff. So yeah, I mean, I know the guys, like I know Wen Moon and stuff back from Arbitrum days. We've obviously spoke about a bunch of different things in between, but I'd say like, yeah, it's just like our primary function is definitely around capital formation. I think there's some interesting things, especially that we're doing with Cookie 3 and just like a more incentive aligned mechanism around this attention capital markets where you do have to fund your own capital to unlock rewards and reduce cost basis and vice versa. I think that itself is an interesting mechanism. I expect them to probably pick up on that as well and potentially implement something very similar to this. But yeah, when the news comes out for kind of like Legion 2.0 or whatever that is, I think it will be a different scale.
I like it.
I wonder, because you mentioned also growing beyond the Web3 bubble and stuff like that. If you were to bring on any Web2 company, what would be like your wish list? Your top one or top three?
Yeah, these are all very, very valid and exciting questions. I'll stay unanswered for this one because we are, maybe just stay tuned if that's okay.
Yeah, can read between the lines there. Yeah, you're not making it easy for us, Fab, but I see it.
I was trying to like get it around it, but no.
Our lawyers are always saying, make sure you can say that you can't say this stuff.
Fair enough.
The master of building anticipation.
Yeah, we always blame legal. It's always legal's fault. So very much on the same page. Okay, cool. So I guess like zooming out, like we are coming up towards the end here, right? I always love to towards the end, like kind of like take a step back from all this and really kind of just get your hot take on like where we headed in the next couple of years within the capital formation space. What do you think are the biggest opportunities? Do you have any spicy hot takes on, bad players or just, people who really
crime in general? Yeah,
just crime in general. Is crime fully legal? I don't know. Like it's a weird time we live in.
Buying
right?
stuff online.
Yeah, redefining what crime technically is.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think like I think I've been pretty clear in the beginning, right? Capital formation, crypto's killer application. Like, we want to take on IPO-scale capital formation. What does that look like? And there's a lot of very interesting, more traditional markets and even private companies and stuff that could potentially be unlocked. I think like as a function of demand, you can kind of see like digital asset treasury companies, stats. Like they are popping off, right? And that is a function of the amount of pent-up demand that you have for a lot of people, especially in the United States, to want to get access to a lot of these assets in a compliant way. So I think like that really should just be like a pretty obvious telltale sign that there is demand for a lot of this, if done in the right way, if done in a regulated way, including disclosures, reducing information asymmetry. And that's very much where we see the market going, right? It's no like crazy, unique hectic insight. We think like, again, the blockchain tech is 10x better. We see a lot of the adoption happening already. You see, a lot of different players. Like I just listened to Vlad's podcast on Cheeky Pint. they're super bullish on tokenization and getting access to a lot of people. Some companies think it's good, some companies don't. When they did release the
new
stocks
chain.
product, exactly.
Oh yeah.
The hood chain too. Yeah. It was funny to see some like companies come out being like, "Oh, it is not involved in us," etc. Who's wearing sort of who's the underwriter and who's the counterparty. But yeah, I think like that's very much the space. Crypto can do capital formation better than anyone else can. We just don't have the distribution yet, but getting there is the next stage.
One thing about distribution, I think I heard you speak a lot about, the value of community on your previous podcasts and your in events. Because at some point you want to go beyond Web3. Twitter is not like Twitter is our sort of X is our bubble, right? How is Legion planning to build like a presence beyond crypto Twitter? Is that with traditional Web2 marketing channels like X, Instagram? Like what's with Legion community strategy?
Yeah, I would say all the above are obviously pretty critical and pretty important. I think the fastest to realize value is probably sits around partnership marketing, and being in the room with the right people and working with the right people and accessing their distribution channels. So I would expect that to be a primary function of where we move to and what we sort of leverage to maximize distribution, not only for Legion and the mission, but the projects that do come through Legion as well.
I like it.
Nice.
All right. I think we do need to move to rapid fire. But I guess before we do that, Fab, well, actually, let's get into rapid fire and then we'll leave the kind of like shills for the end, because we always love to give some time for you to kind of make your shill. But yeah, rapid fire questions. Most underrated marketing tactic in Web3 right now?
I guess partnership marketing is a very obvious one that I just said. I think you can get the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Most overrated marketing tactic. Sorry, actually, Pauline, I go back. Yeah. Pauline, you get the next one.
All right, you want me to take that one, or Pauline, you're going to ask the question?
No, you go.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Most overrated marketing tactic.
Yeah.
I would say paying a ton of money for old media distribution channels.
I know you want to elaborate.
I will not name names. No.
It's okay. We've had a lot of people kind of give a version of that, so I think we can all
media distribution channels.
I wonder. Yeah, I think crypto especially. Okay. Oh, sorry, Pauline, over to you.
Yeah, which crypto brands or projects you think are crushing right now that did not raise on Legion before? Because
but maybe you'd like to see them do it.
I think Inversion kind of crushed it. They kind of like did their announcement, and that's super cool. Santiago and stuff. They're also playing a lot of real world stuff. I'm mega impressed by that launch.
Well, that's the play. It's kind of like a private equity play, right? Where that's a good one. Yes. Okay. And then the last one here. Looking back at the last year or so, what's your biggest learning as a founder? Like biggest professional learning. This is a really fun one.
Yeah, man, I can chat all day about being founder, right? I literally spend every day of my life going through the good, the bad, the ugly. And there is good, and there is bad, and there is ugly. I think like a critical takeaway for this is that taking concentrated bets and saying no, it's a very obvious thing, but I always find myself wanting to do more and more and more and more, right? And I think like we've taken this note on like for this next part of Legion, we're just going to take a very concentrated bet and double down on this particular niche and just do that thing well. And I think that's like, especially in crypto, it's very easy to be like, okay, price goes up. This is a new narrative. Like you're trying to raise money, .ai company or whatever it is. I think it's just like stick to your guns, go do something very well. And once you crush that, then everything becomes easier.
Just relentless like grit. Right. And like holding on to it and which I think kind of bringing it full circle. I think it's, hearing your kind of initial life story, I think was really helpful to kind of set that context. Cause as you said, right, like there's the pros and the cons of that kind of situation. Right. But I would, I guess, give you kudos maybe for, in a lot of situations, that's where like, what is it? Like you put metal through the fire and it gets harder, right? So being able to like build that resilience and persistence it's not easy. And sometimes, life forces it on you and sometimes you're able to cultivate it. But big ups to you, Fab. So,
yeah, thank you.
respect.
Yeah, I got a lot of love for every person giving entrepreneurship a crack. Like always drop in DMs. You want to chat, you want ideas to bounce off it. Like I've been through good, bad, and ugly. I'll tell you that. Always happy to dig deep. And I think like having a good team that actually cares about what you're doing and having people that actually like Maddie is a co-founder, machine, the best co-founder I've ever had in my life. Love the man. And I think just like we're both like dogmatic focused on like fundamentally seeing change in the industry. And because that's our underlying motivator is like we put a lot of like the cash grabs or like the other bits and pieces out of the way. I think just like, again, being dogmatic around one, doubling down is very bullish strategy.
Focus. I love it. Yeah, there's always shiny new toys, right? Shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, for sure.
Too many.
Especially now with the AI. It's like, vibe code, something new.
Could I flip the switch and ask you two that same question, especially on the the key learning as being a founder, and I guess Pauline being the community lead?
I'll throw it to Pauline because I need to think on that one for a second too.
Me too, because I've never actually would always ask.
I think for me, probably I think the biggest learning, and I think this is a pretty common, maybe it's less of learning, but I think it's something that every founder has to go through is like, especially a lot of my career was early stage companies. So like from idea to inception, early stage. And then, I was at a lot of venture studios, right? So I was more like incubating and then handing it off to the founder to really run with it and encouraging them to grow. But especially I think with something like Myosin, where we've been around for 3 years, we are decentralizing over time. We're scaling out the organization and the teams and the leads. I think it's the natural process that every founder goes through of learning to delegate. And, everyone, if I could do everything, I'd probably be happier because, I have that control, right? But learning to let go and trusting people, and even when they make mistakes, giving that space for your teammates to make those mistakes and learn and grow on their own is really important. Because otherwise we couldn't get to where we are today. We can't, as you said, like scale and distribution is at the end of, like that's the end goal anyways. So if it's always the Blake show, it's never going to work, right? So to turn this network into a proper DAO, it requires all those things. It requires reputation score for ourselves as well, something we're thinking a lot about. So yeah, I think that's main learning this past year or two is learning to let go and delegate and give permission for mistakes. Because that will happen, and you're gonna be a little like, fuck, I should have just done it. I could have done it better and faster. But people gotta learn, right? Yeah,
that's true. And
I think it's every founder's learning at some point.
And the people who don't are the micromanagers, and they're the people who create toxic company cultures because then nobody wants to do anything.
Yeah. And I think like another critical component of that is it's like how you incubate your culture, which is like everyone's like, you need a good culture, right? But I think like unless you actually allocate and dedicate time to doing that right, I think it's like extremely impactful. This is kind of what I was touching on. Like you need people to actually believe in what you're doing. And I've always been fascinating is like what makes a high performing team. You look at like the Premier League, like they're spending hundreds of millions of pounds to get the best players in the world. It's like how does like a Man City versus an Arsenal versus a Liverpool, like how do you get the outcome? And I think a lot of that comes down to like, the culture at the club and the coaching staff. And I think it's always been like very interesting to look at a lot of those dynamics and try to like take some of that learning back into the team.
And a lot of it starts at the top too, right? Like you gotta, if you don't give that, if there's no mandate, you can try and incubate from the bottom, and sometimes it happens, but if leadership squashes it, it's all fucked anyways, right? So it's like it's a team effort. Yeah, same page. Pauline, any thoughts on your side?
I think the first one that came to my mind, and maybe it's just I don't know, because my thinking was like stick to your gut more, because I think that I can be swung a lot of the times, and it's important to value and take on everyone's opinion, but at the end of the day, like there are certain decision makers, and you just have to like make decisions ruthlessly, but also if you make a mistake, like own up to it obviously later on, but also like have trust in yourself more and be decisive.
Oh, I like it. Yeah. It kind of ties back to Simon and I talk about this all the time, my co-founder, which is strong convictions. Strong opinions loosely held, right? So it's like have an opinion, be forceful about it, but if other facts present themselves, we need to be humble enough to just be like, okay, you know what? maybe this isn't the right move. Let's pivot a little bit to make, respond to the facts as they come through. Yeah. Okay. So we're at the end here. Fab, this was really great. I want to give you a second to just kind of, show yourself. Is there any call to action? Is there anything people should be looking out for? And if so, where should they be looking, and what can people expect? And any type of timeline is always helpful too. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I'm not a big shill. I think the product will speak for itself and the service will speak for itself. But come follow legion.cc on X, or you could follow me, do it different, but D0 instead of DO on X as well. Exciting news coming out on let's call it the 17th of this month. And then it'll be kind of step 2 of about 4 or 5 exciting announcements that will make first one, or actually maybe step 3, kind of attention to capital markets, the first one, and then the raise with Fennec, Bourbon Howard, etc. The second one, this will be step 3, and then there'll be another 3 exciting bits and pieces that we'll release. I think, we've been cooking hard. Typically, people get to a stage, they do a raise, and it's kind of like, positive brand that people believe in something you're going to build into the future. But we figured, why not also go out and build it and then get it to market and take it from there.
Sky ships. We like it.
All right. Appreciate you guys having me on. Bloody good to chat. Yeah. Any founders as well you want to chat, just talk shit, hit me up. Always happy to do so.
All right. Beautiful stuff, Fab. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you. We'll see you online, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right.
Ciao.
Hi, and welcome to Chain Reactions, a weekly live stream from Myosin.xyz, the leading global marketing network, and hosted by yours truly, Blake, and my co-host, Polina. Tune in each week as we jam on the latest happenings in the wild and wonderful world of Web3. We're live on unlonely.app every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, and release the pod every following week on Tuesdays. Now, let's talk Chain Reactions.